May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So I wanted to ask if anybody had any questions from the readings this week. And just unmute yourself and speak up. I mean, I realize I'm making a huge assumption that anybody read anything.
And also, if there's anyone who didn't get the readings or that is here tonight that wasn't here previously and needs the readings, I will put my email in the chat so they can request them.
Thank you, Rebecca. I still cannot log on.
You still cannot what?
Log on, of course.
Well, you're on, so that's good enough. However you did it, it's good enough.
I can't see. That's the problem.
Make sure you've got the Zoom tab clicked.
Yeah, that's what the surgery. I'm trying to get it on my tablet.
Okay.
I'll figure it out.
Robert.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I started with this reading, the big material. I don't remember the name, but the name of the chapter.
Wait a minute, I can't hear you. Okay. All right. Can you start again, Veronica?
Okay, yes. There, I started with reading with some material, and I started with this piece that is titled Meditation on the Mind Itself. And I have to tell you, it was very tough. I was completely overwhelmed with the material and trying to understand, because here basically they are saying that we have to meditate in our own consciousness. And if I understood correctly, basically that means that we have to think of nothing. I mean, we cannot even be thinking about colors.
You're actually suggesting that you're meditating on the mind, right? Is the mind nothing?
No. I mean, no, it is. No, it's not nothing.
That's very important to remember.
Yes.
Is that when you're meditating on consciousness or on the mind, you're just holding your awareness as your object of the meditation. So all that means is you're just observing what arises in the mind. You're observing if there are any pauses between thoughts. If, a state of mind like anger arises, you observe that. So you're just present with the mind itself.
I was a little confused because I guess when we're doing the meditation, we're trying to focus on the breath to be able to control the mind in a way. This one,
it's two different meditations.
Oh, okay. This one I found a little bit more challenging because in one, we have to focus the mind on one object. And in this one, we have to be like passive observers of what it comes without judgment and just allowing the mind to go wherever the mind wants to go. Is that right?
Well, or just not following it anywhere.
Okay.
That's just, it's literally, so the following your breath is a practice in order to discipline the mind to focus on whatever you're telling the mind to focus on, which is in that case is the sensation of the breath going in and out of the body. It is used primarily to settle the mind down from its, general busyness, but it's also used as a way of practicing again and again of following the instructions,
Mhm.
you know? So most meditations start with a few minutes of that, just a way to help us kind of settle in to the practice of sitting and sitting quietly, you know, and then it just happened. And then, you know, once you've gotten settled in your body, then you try to focus specifically on the breath to train it in the discipline of following the instructions. And then when you go to a second object, such as the mind,
Mhm.
you're letting go of that first part of the meditation, and then you're focusing on however the object is described. The mind is one of the most challenging objects, especially they say for Westerners, it's really difficult. So they often suggest first meditating on the breath or doing a visualization meditation like on Tara or Shakyamuni Buddha, because we find those easier. You know, eventually we want to be able to settle the mind though, and be able to just be present and observe what's going on with the mind. You know? And so we have different exercises for that. So you'll see a meditation. I think there's one that I sent you, and I can't remember if it's called The Clarity of the Mind. It's a meditation by Venerable George Chernoff. And it's, and he talks about like watching fish in an aquarium, and that our thoughts are like the fish. And we want to become familiar with the water, because that's the nature of the mind. So whatever is going through the mind, like the fish, you know, it just goes through the mind, like clouds in a sky. You use that analogy. And when we start looking at the mind or trying to just even be present with the mind in general, what we experience is a lot of thinking. You know, and then we experience a lot of getting distracted. We'll start thinking about something else entirely. We'll forget all about what we're doing, you know, and so then we can use the breath, the sensation of the breath, as an anchor to bring us back to what we're doing. You know, so the breath, yeah.
Like for example, that in my case, I'm a beginner. With that type of meditation, I found just in theory
wouldn't start
more
with that one.
challenging that
Yeah.
focusing on something more.
I would start with the reading, and I would start with the breath meditations. I think they're numbered. The first meditation was Shakyamuni Buddha. The second one was, you know, purification with the breath, and then maybe various breath meditations. Yeah, you don't want to start, and it's hard, and we want to get a taste of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's when we're beginners, we have to accept that mostly our experience be one of distracted mind,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
that's okay.
Yes.
That's where we start.
In the
So I would
material,
start with the breath meditations. Yeah.
yeah. One aside comment. One of there was, I don't remember where in the material I read it, but basically the author is saying that the meditation, it has to be like a daily practice, and it gives the example. It cannot be used as just to make us feel better at the moment. It's not like a Tylenol type of thing that you take it to make the fever go away, but you're not fighting the cause. The meditation is more than the good feeling or the peace that we feel for the time of the meditation. It is more than that. So I like that.
Can anybody address Veronica's question from what we talked about last week? What is meditation?
Familiarization with the mind.
Becoming familiar with the mind. Okay. Anything else? Okay, you see, you're not alone.
You mean anything else about the comments about the,
Meditation. Yeah, I mean, because it's true. What's the purpose of meditation? Okay, it's to become familiar with the mind. Why do we care about becoming familiar with the mind? Yeah, Lamo.
From my understanding is, from a Buddhist point of view, we store the mind as clear and known.
Well, that's the definition. But what's the purpose of meditation?
Right. The purpose of it, now that since our minds are not clear, our purpose of meditation is to reach that goal where it is
To
clear.
become clear and knowing? That I don't think that's actually accurate, Lamo. The definition of mind is clear and knowing.
Right?
Okay. And this is because that's the nature, the nature of the mind. And you're right that one of the purposes of meditation is to discover that clarity of the mind.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the mind here.
There isn't any mind here.
So after a while, what I found of repeating the certain short mantra.
Okay, I'm asking what the purpose is, not so much what your experience is at the moment. We're starting with beginners.
Well, wouldn't that be the same? I'm a beginner. I mean, I'm not enlightened.
Okay, well, Hernan, what do you think?
I think the goal is to recognize patterns and behaviors.
And that comes under the heading of being familiar with the mind. So part of what meditation does, learning how, like Lamo says, learning how to settle the mind down, learning how to, observe, staying with, like sort of a mirror mind, you could almost say, but I'm getting complicated there. So the purpose of meditation is to become more aware. And what do we want to become more aware of? Our mind. Because it's our mind that drives our actions of body and speech. So we really want to become aware first of the power of the mind, the potential of the mind, and we want to be aware of what we're using the mind for now. So we want to observe what's going on in the mind now. So it's really about becoming more awake, more alert. It's not, and in fact, what's so ironic is that the starting position of meditation, the physical aspect of meditation is to be relaxed. So Westerners, we tend to learn meditation as a way to relax. Whereas in Buddhism, that's where you start. You start with a relaxed body, not holding it too tight, but you're upright. We'll talk about the posture tonight, but you're upright. You have sort of an open, posture, to feel alert and awake. But you're focused inward. So you're not looking out. You're just gazing downwards with no focus at all. Okay. So, and this posture is more conducive to being alert. Okay. Now, the good news is using this technique eventually will help us gain more and more control of the way we think, what thoughts we choose to follow, what thoughts we choose not to follow, which can bring our minds, more at ease, the more we practice it. And so it's a daily practice. Like I asked people last week, if you really consider committing to doing this 5 minutes a day. Was anybody successful? Yay. rejoice, you know. So this is, you know, it's something we try to do daily because we want to get into the habit of going inward and becoming more familiar with our mind every day till it becomes habit. We use the meditation circumstance because it makes it easier to do. So if we have this, you know, we sit in the same place every day, we know how long we're going to do it, and we choose what we're gonna do, then that, you know, helps us build a habit. When you know, what this helps us during the day with is the more we become accustomed to observing what's going on in the mind, the more we're able to do that throughout the day and just kind of check in. And that's where we can start to see if our thinking is skillful or unskillful. You know? But first, we just need to see what we're thinking. You know? And sometimes we discover we are almost never present for our lives. We're always thinking about something else. And some studies have shown that just by virtue of being focused on what you're actually doing in the moment, we feel happier, more contented. Just that little thing of being focused on what we're doing. It turns out we have to practice that because we have a habit of not doing that. It's like, you know, we're always training in multitasking with our minds. Even though we might not be doing multiple things, we may be doing one thing, like putting the dishes in the dishwasher, but we're always thinking about several other things. It's like we review our to-do list over and over and over again. And that doesn't have, what kind of effect does that have on our minds? That's a question.
It can be exhausting.
Okay, so it can wear us out. How much harder do you think it is to be thinking of something else when you're doing something? How much more effort do you think you might use? Hernan, go ahead.
I think it would bring more anxiety and impatience.
More anxiety and impatience, is that what you said? Okay, and impatience. What about, I mean, are you missing your life?
And it's not as efficient. I mean, I find if I'm trying to multitask, then none of the things are being done as well as if I would just slow down and concentrate on one task at a time.
What I find really funny too is that often it's not that we're doing multiple things, although sometimes we even do that, but that we are doing one thing, like I said, and our mind's going to a lot of different places, but you're not actually doing any of those things. So how is that helping you do what you're doing? And how does it help you do those other things? Is it even possible? All you're doing really is distracting yourself from what you're doing in that moment. And so we might discover that's not helpful. And this gets at what Lama was saying too, because in a way, if we're not aware of what we're thinking, then we're not being informed by our mind. We're like playing a radio in the background, only it's our mind. And our mind is so much more valuable than that. You know, we have all these amazing faculties because the mind is so, it has so much potential. You know, we can, once we discipline it, we can apply it to whatever it is we want to be focused on. So if we want to be focused on our partner while we're having a conversation, so that we're truly able to listen and then communicate, you know, if we're not thinking about 75 other things, or in fact, if we're not thinking about one other thing, we are so much more able to be present for the relationship. If we're trying to learn something new, the more able we are to remember what it is we're trying to do, you know, the more effective our learning process is. You know, so just in mundane, ordinary kind of ways, being able to notice what's going on in our mind and then being able to say, hey, I want to just focus on this. And then just focus on this is a wonderful skill to have. So that's, so doing something like learning how to focus on the sensation of the breath is just a tool to help us learn how to follow the instructions. And then what's wonderful is a natural side effect of focusing on the breath is that the body relaxes and the mind settles down some. And so if we get really skilled at this instruction, and we can use it whenever during the day when we're starting to feel like our lives are running amok or our minds are running amok, we can just go to the breath for a few moments and settle everything down. And that can be extremely helpful. Does that answer your question, Veronica, at all? Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So tonight, let's start with, we're going to do the 9-round breathing, which a lot of you are very familiar with. And this particular technique is really helpful if you find, it's helpful at the beginning of any meditation. It's just helpful when you sit, or before you're doing any activity where you want to be able to focus better. And it's a tool that you can use to sort of, balance the energies, the subtle energies of the body and the mind. So, and it's using the breath to be able to do that. So there's just visualization with it, and you don't have to worry about whether or not you can visualize this. It's just more of like, it's just a helpful description about what's going on with the subtle channels and winds in the body. And that might be useful much later on in your practice, but it's really just about trying to get familiar with the way the subtle body is according to Buddhism. Okay, so it's said that there are 3 main channels that our wind energy moves in. So like in a way you could say like the breath moves in these channels all the way, but it's more subtle than the breath. And they're like straws. They're round and they're hollow. So there's a central channel and one to the right and one to the left. I'm even going to give you the colors, but don't worry about it. And this is in the meditation. It's called Various Breath Meditation. So you've got it in writing already. So the channels are round and hollow, the size of a straw. They're very fine, so they're little. I mean, they're fit, you know, they're not a gross thing like our spine. The central channel is blue, the right channel is red, and the left channel is white. The left and right channels run from the left and right nostrils, down along the spine, on the inside of the spine, you know, down to about 4 finger widths below the navel. So in my case, that's the fattest part of my belly. The blue central channel runs from a point midway between the eyebrows, also down along the spine to 4 finger widths below the navel. So you've got these 3 channels just going up like a cane, goes up and down. For the meditation, visualize that the ends of the right and left channels join the central channel down at that point 4 fingers below the navel. And then we're going to hold our left nostril closed. You can either just visualize this with your mind or actually do it if it makes it easier. And you breathe in through the right nostril. And then to exhale, you switch, breathing out through the left nostril. And you do that 3 times. And then you reverse it. You breathe in through the left, out through the right, 3 times. And then you breathe through both nostrils evenly 3 times. And as you do this, with each exhale, you can imagine that all your impurities, your negative states of mind, your distractions leave the body. Even sleepiness and dullness is just expelled with each exhale. And then you can imagine with the inhales that you're breathing in light, energy, positive qualities, everything that keeps you uplifted. And you can do this for 3 sets. So, 3 sets of 3 breaths, but you don't want to do it more than that. And if you get dizzy after 1 set or 2 sets, you stop there. And then just then just notice the sensation of the breath going in and out of the nose. So we're going to try that for three rounds. Okay, so just think you're doing this in order to, discover these different tools that are taught about meditation, and you're going to give it a try in order to hopefully learn something that will be of benefit. Okay. So first, so close, keep your eyes lowered. Breathe in through the right nostril and exhale left 3 times. and reverse. And then breathe in evenly through both nostrils 3 times. And then you could do another sequence, breathing in through the right, out through the left 3 times. And in through the left, out through the right 3 times. And then evenly through both 3 times. Then just let your mind rest on the sensation of the breath at the tip of the nose as it goes in and out of the body. So now bring your attention back to the group. What did you experience? Anything or notice? Peggy?
I noticed how busy my mind was, and it was something I didn't expect. I anticipated that it would be calmer. I had to go back to stop many times.
Anybody else? Don?
I must have a deviated septum or something because I can breathe in much easier on one side than the other.
I have that
John?
problem also.
So the fact that you noticed that, what is that? What is that? Are you observing the sensation or are you thinking?
Well, kind of both, I guess.
So one of the things we want to try to do when we're using this practice is letting go of the thought.
Once I stopped fighting, breathing in and out of that one side, I just focused on the visualization of the in the left side and out the right side, and then it was good.
So it was easier for you to not to actually physically block and just focus on the
because
visual.
if I physically block, I can't breathe.
Breathe through one of those. I can relate. Yeah. And of course, the point isn't the breath, actually. It really is the balancing of the energies. So it's perfectly fine. Some people just find it, and sometimes it's, it's just funny. It's just different all the time. Some days it's easier to just go ahead and block a nostril to get started, to kind of help your body understand the instructions, and other times that is actually the distraction. So it really does depend. But it is helpful to just let go of thinking about it and just, of course, you have to be familiar with the practice to be able to not think about it. So, but anything else? Yeah, Lama.
Yeah, this is kind of maybe funny to some, but practicing this meditation for many years, today, all that kept going through my mind was, how did Buddha know my favorite colors when they were mixed?
How did the Buddha know the colors?
Yeah, and it turned out purple. The blue, the white. It was like the most ridiculous thing. And I didn't want to laugh. I kept trying it again. And all it kept mixing was, and I added more blue, then I added more.
And this is what we do, don't we? Sometimes we discover we're having just some, it's like sometimes our dreams, like that, it's like this brings up a good point about when we're making efforts to meditate, and it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or you're very experienced, is you never know what might arise. So expectations during meditation are an obstacle. They don't help, and judging a meditation, it doesn't help. It's really just about experiencing whatever the meditation is, and however it works out is fine, doesn't matter. But we do want to observe. We might learn something, we might find a technique that's helpful for us, or find a technique that's sometimes helpful for us. I find this particular technique very helpful for me in terms of just settling in on whatever I'm going to do. So I find it a helpful thing to do before meditation, before reading a Dharma text, before, doing something that's new for me or difficult for me, because it can just settle my nerves down as well, because it's this balancing of our energies. So for me, it's helpful that way. And you just have to discover if it's helpful for you or not. I think one of the reasons it's one of the instructions for us to try it in the beginning is because by doing this really sort of very specific technique, one side, the other side, it gives us, stuff to focus on, and it helps us, it's hard to follow the instructions if we're distracted. So you kind of have to be paying attention. And so it helps us, when we're new, to, give us something to do at the beginning, because, we're so busy with its various thoughts that are all over the place, that to, get it to settle, we kind of really need to pull ourselves in. So that's, so the body scan meditation, this kind of breath meditation are all about bringing your attention to what's going on now. And so the breath meditation kind of, because of the instructions helps with that. And then just watching the sensations of the body helps you bring to you what's going on right now. So they both have that usefulness, as well as other reasons one would do them. It can be very helpful if you are feeling overwhelmed, that you use the idea that you're breathing out all your distractions, your worries, all your problems, and breathing in peace, calm, wonderful, loving, kind, radiant white light. So those are just ways to kind of bring us in touch with other things that are going on besides whatever craziness our minds decided to latch onto. Because this is one of the things that we discover when we become more familiar with our minds, is there's a stillness to the mind that's underneath all the upheaval going on that we're mostly aware of. And we're just so accustomed to just thinking. We don't realize there's a space between thoughts. And when we start to access that space, we can discover this stillness, this clarity, this, you know, it's like the pause is our opportunity for choice. And so that, and it's always available to us once we learn how to access it. And that's what takes a lot of practice. You know, just being able to, or being willing to just sit for 5 minutes and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And the more we learn how to, you know, be aware that there are thoughts arising in the mind, but not engage them. Does that sentence make sense? You're aware of a thought, but then you don't engage the thought. So what's that like?
It's like letting go to me. And just acknowledging it and letting it pass.
And how do you let it pass?
By not following it, noticing it, and then bring it back to the breath or, you know, whatever the object is.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't add anything more to that thought. I don't make it a story.
Okay.
And it helps to me to say, I don't know, I heard it somewhere else, to say thinking is just thinking. Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the instructions on that various breath meditations is, oh, maybe it's not on that one. Oh, yes, it is. It's under the developing mindfulness part. So it might be helpful to label. So you could just label thinking, like if it's a sensation, you could just say tingling, pain. We don't have to respond to it. We can just label it. Oh, that's what's arisen in the mind. You know, we don't have to think that way. We just label it. And that's really helpful. And then like Cecilia's saying, we don't add anything to it. You know, it's sort of like, so for example, noticing that your breathing is more difficult on one side, on one nostril than the other, then you don't follow that up with, I must have a deviated septum, or, oh yeah, that's right, I got my nose broken. I had my nose broken. So ran into a door. So that's what's important. And the reason why this is such a good skill to develop, of just not adding anything to it, letting it go, you know, just labeling it, thinking, and seeing what it, you know, just being there until whatever arises next, is what helps us start to see how much we feed our thoughts. Because when we feed our thoughts, we are engaging with the thought. We are adding something to it. You know, it's sort of like, yes, and. And so that's how we can have some random thought and create a whole story that we start to think about for the next 20 minutes. Yeah, Rebecca.
I was just thinking it was really helpful what you just said about in relation to this about not bringing expectations, because for myself anyway, that it depends if I'm really tired or if it's been a particularly stressful day, like that doesn't always work, you know, that these tools of like labeling things, that sometimes it works really well, but then not to get discouraged when it doesn't work, because a lot of it I think depends also on your environment and your physical state at the time. So that was very helpful and really good advice, I think, not to bring expectations to your session of meditation.
And it's so helpful in the beginning, particularly because, you know, the first couple of weeks, if we meditate for 5 minutes every day, it's entirely possible for, you know, 21 times for you to sit down and go, oh, I can't do this. And just, you know, and if you decide to give up because you believe that comment, then that's it. You really, truly will never get it because you've stopped trying, you know, because there's sort of nothing to get except showing up. You know, that's the hardest part of meditation, is the discipline of just doing it. Even if you don't feel great, even if you're tired, even if you've only got 5 minutes and you usually like to do at least 20 minutes or vice versa. But it's just, it's this, that resistance in the mind for whatever it falls into. For some people, it's time. I don't have enough time. For other people, it's fatigue. They just don't feel like they can do it because they're too tired. For other people, it's that they've got so many things on their to-do list. It's just, there's no room in their mind to try it. You know, it can be all sorts of things, or they don't want to look, you know? So it's just, we need to, you know, look at, you know, what pattern our resistance might fall into, and then examine that. Is it true? I don't know about you, but I certainly waste a lot more than 5 minutes a day. You know, so when I tell myself I don't have time, it's a lie. It's absolutely a lie. You know, I don't make the time. You know, I put everything else above it. And so we just have to be honest with ourselves and go, okay, yeah, I do have the time. I just don't know if I really want to use that time this way. So what do we need then? What helps us get over that hump of just kind of going, yeah, but. Yeah.
Thinking about death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking about death. Everybody's dying.
Mamo's finding that quite amusing.
Yes, I like Jacket is funny. I mean, I know with myself, it's, since I'm young, I'm a procrastinator.
Right.
Oh, I'll do it later. Oh, I'll do it later. Even though it, and then I put even the 5-minute time limit. Like I shouldn't even put that in my brain. Because
Well, it depends on whether you have, you know, whether you need to put it in your brain just because you have a schedule that you do, like going, you know, if you know, we don't want to, you know, so it depends. That's a good point. I mean, for some people, having a particular time can become the obstacle.
it was the obstacle for me, and I had asked, and they said, don't think about time. And I asked, well, you know, I fought the obstacle with the Lama, and he said, well, why is it so important to you? It's only a few minutes.
And this is the question I'm asking. When I, you know, is exactly this, is how do we prioritize meditation? What do we need to think about in order to make it a priority on a daily basis? So
For
we
me,
need to understand it's useful, right? Who said something? Jack. Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's always death and suffering. Run and you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking. It's racing around to come up behind you again. It's the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, one day closer to death.
Okay, so that's a meditation we can do.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a very good one. It's certainly one that Lama Zopa Rinpoche recommends a lot, you know, because we will run out of time.
Yeah.
What's another kind of way to prioritize it? Totally different way.
Believe that it works.
Or at least you want to find out that it works. You may not have a belief that it works, but you kind of go, oh, well, they've been, you know, if this has been practiced for thousands of years by people who say it works, maybe I'll give it a try. What does it work for? What's one of the things that in Buddhism we're trying to do?
Help ourselves so we can help others.
Help ourselves so we can help others. So meditation helps us. So that's one of the things we want to start developing. You know, like you might be reading about meditation, you know, start gathering these ideas about the ways in which meditation might help us, you know, and then develop a curiosity to want to find out if it's true. Because a lot of people will say, you know, after they've meditated for a couple of months, or, you know, 4 months or something, and then when they miss a day, they notice a difference. They may not be able to put their finger on in what way it's different. They notice it's different. Graziella.
Yeah, I was thinking that you said what ways, what I can do to make it work. And I'm thinking that either to have a regular time every day or first thing in the morning.
Which
Just
could be your
about.
regular time every day. Yes. You know, I mean, I think that, so these are some of the tips that they say, you know, that helps us get into the discipline. One is to pick a spot and use the same spot every day. For some people, that's just sitting cross-legged on their bed. You know? It's not like it has to be a fancy spot. And that's what all the monks in the monasteries do, you know. 2, do it at the same time every day. So that you become, you know how we have body memory, you know, that when, you know, when we know how to ride a bicycle or something, you know, so we, you know, even if we haven't ridden a bike for, you know, 6 months or something, it's not, you know, our body remembers what to do. When we want to create mental memory, you know, we want to develop a habit such that, you know, when we go to that spot, we sit in this way, that and we're going to do this activity, so that it becomes this, just like, you know what to do when you pick up your toothbrush. So it just helps us get into the routine of it. And then you might want to think about, oh, they say that this is a technique that might help me learn how to reduce suffering in my life. Well, that sounds good. You know, twist my arm. So, you know, have more happiness in my life. You know, so you want to look at what the, you know, what's the point of getting to know the mind? The point of getting to know the mind is to see how we create our own suffering with the way we think. And by seeing how we create our own suffering by the way we think, we can learn how to interrupt those habits and replace them with something more skillful. And so just by looking at things a different way or thinking about things in a different way, that can help us reduce our suffering. Or recognizing that we're always looking at everything going wrong. And so, you know, of course I have to work hard at making myself uplifted because I'm always looking at everything that's going wrong. So maybe I want to change that. So in these ways we can, you know, help ourselves see what obstacles we put in our own way that increase the suffering in our mind. And then sometimes we even notice, we notice how we, some of our habits increase the suffering of the body. And so we recognize, so this is why, we motivate ourselves to exercise. We motivate, so these are the things. So it's good to have, when you're reading about meditation, the articles about meditation, or you just, we were just reading in Freedom Through Understanding, Lama Yeshe's kind of view of meditation. It's really lovely. It's just the first couple of pages of that book. You can read it on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. So we want to find reasons to help us motivate. But we also want to do it. You can read about it till you're dead, but if you don't do it, it is not going to change your mind. Reading about it will not change your mind. Doing it can change your mind. So there's a point at which you put the book down and you give it a go. So we do need a little instruction, and then now I'm going to go through the what I consider the hilarious slides of posture, because I don't sit like this. Nicole and Hernan probably can demonstrate how to sit properly. That's not it. I know I have this open. Okay. Where is it? Okay. So as a reminder, Rinpoche says meditation is primarily concerned with caring for the mind. Although our body and mind are intimately related and interconnected, they are quite different types of phenomena. Our body is an object we can see with our eyes, but not so the mind. So it really is about turning our awareness inward, be able to get familiar with the mind. It's not like looking at something. It's not like reading a book. And meditation helps us realize that we have a choice in any moment to either return to the present or to escalate our suffering by letting our stories and thoughts take over. So this can be one of those things that helps inspire us to do the practice. You read something like this and go, oh, so maybe there's some method to this madness. If this is a technique, a tool that I can use to reduce my suffering by looking at how I'm thinking. I have too many things on my screen. I don't know what y'all see. Do you see all the people as well as the screen?
No, I just see you. And
Yeah, no, it looks.
text. I see Rebecca.
Okay.
Lama Yeshe.
Thank you. So this is an example of good meditation posture. So the legs, there's 7 points in meditation posture. Sometimes they say 8, and then I think that has to do with the breath. But the legs, so the legs are crossed in what's called a Vajra position. In yoga, it's called a lotus position. And that's where, you put your feet on top of each thigh. Yeah, that's never happened for me. But if you can do it, that's fabulous. Or half Vajra, where only one foot is up on your thigh. In my case, I sit in the Burmese style, where both of my feet are actually on the cushion in front. So I'm not, my feet are not up on top of my thighs. They're just crossed flat on the cushion. If you're sitting on a chair, it's important to have your feet flat on the floor. So if you need a cushion under your feet, that's helpful, because you don't want dangling feet. You want a stable posture. And so the reason they use this Vajra posture And if you learn when you're young, it's very doable, when you're still very flexible when you're little. And so a lot of the Asian cultures, they didn't use chairs and things, so the whole of their lives, they either squatted or they, so this is, relatively easy for them compared to Westerners who grew up using chairs. The hands are in the lap with the right on top of the left, the palms upward and thumbs touching. And notice that the arms are away from the body. That helps with, so that you don't build up heat. And the thumbs touching helps keep those energies balanced and able to move from side to side. Your back is straight, and this is the most important element of the posture, is having a straight back, upright, alert. Your eyes, it's helpful if they're partly open, but the gaze is downward. So your head's slightly tilted forward, not much. If it's tilted too far, that just makes you sleepy. Your mouth is closed, just gently closed, but the teeth are not necessarily touching. And the tongue is on the roof of the mouth behind your upper teeth. And you try to have a relaxed jaw. Okay, does that make sense? For those of us who sit in a chair, the main thing is, again, to have your feet flat, to not lean back in your chair, but to, maybe sit a little bit forward in your chair so your back is, so you're not leaning back. I mean, that obviously everybody's going to have different physical abilities, but mainly you want to be able to sit up straight, even in your lap. In fact, when you're sitting on a chair, it's really easy to do the hands because they're sort of in the right position. So, because the hands should be, your thumbs should be at your navel, and then the palms of your hands are about 4 inches below the navel. So that's kind of resting in your lap. And then the arms out. And then I'm sure those who are taught yoga or Pilates or whatever, this again gets, those core muscles should be engaged so you can sit up straight. And your chest, your rib cage is open. It's, and this is that alert posture. So this is one of those simple things we can do, is when we're, spending our 2 minutes watching our breath, if we start to get sleepy, it can be helpful to open your eyes more and just let more light in. And also to sit up again. Make sure your spine is up, straight, and that you're upright, but your shoulders are relaxed. And not that my shoulders have ever been relaxed, but that's the theory. Okay. And the main reason for these suggestions is about keeping your energy balanced, having your spine straight. Those channels we were talking about are, also straight. It helps with that alertness, upliftedness, that feeling of being more awake. And it's stable. You wouldn't think it's stable, but if you really notice, when you start sitting, you might discover not only is your mind all over the place, but you fidget. You move, If we all were recorded while we're watching TV, we'd probably be amazed at how much we move. We change this and change that. And that's not conducive to meditation. Those are all going to distract you from the stability of the mind. I mean, eventually when you're very skilled, nothing will distract you. But it's those of us who are not yogis, the more help we can give ourselves, with not distracting ourselves. So that's one of the things. So you pick a spot that has more quiet than not quiet. You pick a spot that is relatively cool rather than hot. You pick a spot that maybe is not bright lights, but not dark, because that just, we don't want to encourage sleepiness or dullness. So early morning on the, a sunrise on the porch can be a really good time, good place, good time. If there's enough light, usually not 92. So we want to be comfortable, but not slouchy. And initially, if you're not used to sitting up straight, that might feel a little weird or uncomfortable. And you just try to tolerate that discomfort to see if you can get used to it. So basically they say if you have discomfort, physical discomfort, it's good to pause before doing anything. Don't just immediately change your position. Try to just see if it's temporary and it goes away. If we engage in it, we might make it worse. Now, if you realize you're having a leg cramp or there's something going on and you must move, then of course you gently move. Okay. Any questions about the posture? Okay. So the steps for meditation. Basically, we start, and this is true for any activity really, you want to develop a motivation and intention. So you really, first, you look at, why am I doing this? And so you try to generate a positive motivation. So you think about what might be the benefits to you. And the benefit might simply be, I'm curious to discover if there's anything to this. So you may not know what its advantages are yet because this is an experiment. And from that motivation, you set an intention. I'm going to meditate now. I'm going to rest my mind on the movement of the breath for 5 minutes. And I will return my mind to the object whenever I realize I've lost the object. You don't say something that you can't do. Like, I'm going to follow the sensation of my breath for 5 minutes and I will never lose it. That's what I had before. I had to edit it. It's mostly that you're going to show up. If the instructions are a breath meditation, I'm going to follow my breath. And then and every time I realize, oh, I'm not following my breath, I'll just gently bring my attention back to my breath. So we set sort of a determination. Intention is like, I've determined that this is what I'm going to do. It's a commitment. And then you bring the object to mind. And then after a few weeks, you might say, oh, I'm not having any trouble placing my mind in the breath for a few minutes. So I'm going to extend my meditation a couple of more minutes. So you might be able to eventually extend your meditation about 20 minutes. But you probably wouldn't need to do a concentration meditation much longer than that. This is a daily meditation. And this is, of course, I'm just talking about breath meditation, but this is also true for analytical meditation. And so the state of mind we're using to help us not, to go back to the object when we've lost it is introspection. Also translated as alertness. But when mindfulness remembers the object, and introspection is the state of mind who notices when you're not doing it. It also notices when you are doing it. It just didn't tell you to do anything different. And then you apply antidotes as needed. So if you realize, I'm getting sleepy, open your eyes, you sit up straight. But if everything's going fine, you don't do anything. Now, most of us, this takes a long time to get to, so don't worry. You don't have to worry too much about this one yet. So common distractions are restlessness, sleepiness, expectations, and regrets. So restlessness, we need to, we're trying to teach ourselves to stay. And so sometimes the restlessness is in the body. We just want to fidget, move, and we're just trying to help ourselves build up our tolerance to just staying put. And then with the mind, it's, every time we realize, oh, I've run off someplace else, you just bring your mind gently back to the object. And then this is what Cecilia was talking about, this mentally note what's arising in your mind. So you can just, if you're having thoughts, you just thinking. If sounds are coming in and you're, thinking about the sounds, or you're hearing the sounds, you could just notice, sound. And then you can try to, one of the meditations we have is meditating on the mind like the sky. And this is getting at the idea that, the nature of the mind is like the vast blue sky, clear, free of any clouds. Our thoughts are like clouds that are passing through the sky. So even sometimes, you can't see any blue sky. It's still just clouds, and they are, temporary. They will pass if we stop engaging them. And then sometimes it's a very turbulent sky, it might be a gigantic big storm, and again, this will pass if we learn how to stop engaging it. Sleepiness. Some people like to take a quick shower before they sit to meditate when they get up in the morning, just to feel like they've woken up. But you can also just, splash your face with water. I'm sorry? To be, not have the room too warm, not to have it too dark. If you're starving, you might want to have a little something to eat, but generally it's not a good idea to eat before meditating because it tends to make you sleepy. It also heats the body up, the digestion. You can also choose to skip the TV program if you meditate at night and go to sleep earlier, and maybe you won't be so sleepy in the morning. This is about prioritizing. Expectations. So we need to recognize when we feel disappointed, and recognize that that feeling of disappointment indicates we had an expectation. I was really looking forward to just sitting quietly for 5 minutes, and the dog wouldn't stop barking. Oh, I really hope to have, a relaxing meditation, and all I could do was think about work. So we always want to remember that the discipline of meditation by itself is beneficial, and accepting whatever happens in your meditation is good enough. And that it takes time to change the mind, and we can't force it to change. And so we can be going along and finally kind of say we've developed a discipline of meditating every day. you know, and then 3 years down the road, we've brought a new object of meditation, you know, like I'm going to meditate on my pride. Well, because it's a new object, it's as if, you know, it's going to be sort of a brand new subject. So, I mean, subject object, but it's a, you know, it means that you'll be back to starting with something new and be uncomfortable and not know everything about it and all this kind of stuff. And so you know, you'll feel like a beginner again because you are. And that's okay. Comparing ourselves with others is insane. That's all I can say about that. First of all, we're going to be wrong. You know, whatever we imagine is happening on their minds, we're going to be wrong. You know, we're going to see somebody who just always has perfect posture, and we're just going to think, wow, you know, how did they do that? Well, what is that? That's a distraction from what you're doing. Well, or we'll hear someone talk about some experience they had while meditating, and you think, gosh, I never do that. I've never had that. I must be doing it wrong. You know, we can't, you know, this is really the best situation to not compare at all, because until you can read someone's mind, you simply really have nothing you're comparing it to. Any questions? You're not, I can't see you all. Because all I can see is my slides.
Islamo.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Within meditation, I can say I actually enjoy. Like when you mention pride, I look at that more as an analytical meditation.
It is an analytical meditation. Yep.
Now, when it comes to single-pointed meditation, I'm embarrassed to say, but I don't like it at all. And it just seems that I cannot, the more I try, I keep trying.
And you just have to keep trying.
And
that's it. There's no other answer to that, Lamo. It really is just showing up. You know, it may be that following the breath is not useful for you.
Okay.
You know, but it is, you know, so you may need to pick, like, say, an image of a Buddha.
Okay.
And just, but it's, you know, and it doesn't matter if, you know, during 5 minutes, 3,000 times your mind goes somewhere else. What matters is that every time you realize it's gone somewhere else, you bring it back to that image. It, you know, it's not, this is not something, all you can do is practice it.
Okay.
And we can talk, you know, if there's particular obstacles that might come up, but it really is a matter of just doing it. About, you know, it's not a matter of how do you know if you've gotten good enough, or it seems like I can never do it. Mostly in our lives, our minds are very distracted. We go off into directions all the time. You know, so it's a matter of just trying again. It's frustrating.
Let me ask you a question. When others have given me suggestions, and I've tried that suggestion, say it's a book, and it'll be there for a while, and then it goes away, and then it turns into another Buddha.
It turns into another what?
Buddha, depiction of Buddha.
Yeah, that's just called excitement. That's just a different distraction. Because, you know, it's called, I mean, actually, they don't call it excitement when it's to a virtuous object. They call it scattering. And it's a normal thing that happens. You know, it's just another way in which the mind is trying to do its own thing. So they do say it's important to try to come back to the Buddha that you first chose. You know, when you just keep trying. So it's hard. There's no doubt that this is hard.
Yes.
I mean, the first level of success, and this is in the reading, it's in the readings that you have where it discusses the 9 levels of concentration. And the first level is when you can hold your mind on the object, or maybe it's the second level, for I think 2 seconds. That's how small, so that's how short the time, you know, is described when we're first starting. You know, that literally our mind's going do 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 do. So let's talk a little bit about one of the things they suggest is using an image if you are sleepy or very distracted, either one, either type of obstacle. So this is part of the reason of visualizing black smoke when you exhale and white light when you inhale. So the black smoke is representing all your problems and worries going out, you know, with each exhale, and the white light is representing, you know, the good qualities, the, you know, the things that uplift the mind and our good qualities like love and compassion and kindness. And then we're breathing in the enlightened energy of the universe. That visualization itself helps us be more alert and less sleepy and less dull, you know, and less distracted. It's giving us something to focus on. So the breath becomes, you know, it can be the object of single pointed meditation, you know, so that's usually the beginner object is the breath. But then it also is used in any meditation as an anchor, you know, so that if you are running amok with your mind, you're supposed to be meditating on compassion, you know, and you know, and instead you're thinking about, you know, lunch, you know, it can help you to just bring your mind back to that sensation of the breath to sort of bring you back to the present moment. You know, because it's one of those things clearly we only do in the present moment. We can't breathe for the future. We can't, you know, it's so, it just is one of those things that brings us back to the present. And also, we don't want our meditations to be too long as beginners. So for those of you who are starting out, you really want to look at, Jackie was recommending on Sunday, you know, a 2-minute, just, you know, just for 2 minutes, follow your breath. I generally say 5 minutes because I also include the, you know, setting a motivation, you know, all that kind of stuff. So, but it is, you want it short. And then you want to extend it a little bit each week, you know, or not really, it's not really by a deadline. It's really more, okay, I've got that, you know, I can try it a little longer. And if your mind immediately goes to some negative space because you're doing it longer, go back to what you were doing. Because we really wanted to develop an attraction to meditation. Not, you know, not seeing it as yet another chore to do. Do people, I mean, does anybody go to the gym or, well, not right now, but work out in some way? Okay, this is not an exercising crowd at all. Okay, I see, no, not doing there. To me, it's a good example of how you might not like it in the beginning, but then, you know, you start to see some benefits from it, and then you kind of miss it when you can't go. Robert, were you going to say something?
No, I do that every day. I make sure I walk at least, or ride a bike or something. Every day I do it, and I feel it when I don't. But I can't get that 5 minutes of meditation. It's incredible. Yeah, but
Well,
I do
you
it.
haven't tried it enough, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that, you know, when you first start exercising, unless you just happen to be fortunate enough to have done it your whole life, you know, so it never was something that you had to start doing. But, you know, if you're like me and you had to start doing it, you know, it's really hard in the beginning, you know. But eventually, if you keep after it, it becomes something that you just do, and you miss it when you don't. And it's because it benefits you in some way. You know, you wouldn't miss it otherwise. So, you know, the same thing happens with meditation. But you really have to accept that in the beginning, there's no benefit in your mind. I mean, you know, it's not like you're going to change your mind after meditating for 5 minutes for a month. Not going to happen. But you may develop the habit of sitting. And that's going to be the condition you need to have meditation start benefiting you. You know, first we need to just do it. It's just like when you exercise, you know, when you start, you're doing such, you know, baby exercises that it's not like your muscles are really going to change, but that's where you have to start. You know, you have to get used to it. And it's the same with meditation. You have to get used to sitting. You have to get used to, you know, where you've decided to sit. You've got to get used to maybe asking your family for permission to sit for 5 minutes. Please don't disturb me for these 5 minutes. You know, so, you know, there's all these things involved. But if you don't do it, it will never become a habit. If you do it for 2 days and then go, oh, that was too hard, and you skip 3 days and then you do it, you probably will never develop the habit. It's really helpful to try to, you know, commit. Does that make sense? It's not the best news. I accept that it's not the best news, but it really is about doing it.
For me, Venerable Tendron, it actually was the best news I've heard in like a few decades, that if I pick an object, if I stay on that object only for 2 seconds, that's okay.
That's the first.
That was like the best news, you know, for myself, because I think a lot of pride came, and I would look to others, and they're sitting there, and of course I'm not clairvoyant, but I was, how come I can't do this? And they're just focusing. So that was.
And again, this is why this is why comparing doesn't really tell us anything. You know, because we have a story. We engage that thought and we create a story. We add all sorts of information to it, and you know, there we go. So, okay. What are some of the other, should we do a meditation now? Okay, and then you can check it off your list for today. Which one do we want to do? Okay, we can do Precious Human Rebirth. I may send y'all a second one. I sent you one that's Connie Miller's, and it's about the 8 freedoms and whatever. And if you don't know what those are, it doesn't help. So I also have one from Sangye Kadro, from How to Meditate. Again, I really encourage you, you know, to look at How to Meditate in the book by Sangye Kadro, or Kathleen McDonald, I guess it's called. Because if you're interested, I mean, because it covers all the different types of Tibetan meditation. And so it's a very useful tool. So if you've been meditating a little while and maybe this is new to Tibetan Buddhism, then you might want to give that a go if you're curious. So let's start again by kind of checking our posture, sitting up straight, trying to become alert. And then bringing our attention inward by lowering our eyelids. Perhaps taking a few deep breaths just to get ourselves oriented in this moment. And try to generate a positive motivation. Just think one that's, that I'm going to give this meditation a try in order to become more familiar with the different types of meditation, with the hope that it may be a benefit, not just to myself, but that it will ripple out to benefit those around me. And then just let your attention rest on your breath for a minute, just noticing the inhale, the exhale. According to the Buddha, we all have Buddha potential. And this is just simply the potential of our minds to become free of all negative states of mind, like anger, and all the incorrect states of mind that arise from ignorance. And we have the potential to fully develop all our positive qualities, such as loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom. It's possible for your mind, this very mind that is sitting here right now, meditating, to become completely clear and pure and very powerful and beneficial for others, able to do so much good for others. If doubt arises in you, if you have the habit of seeing your faults, you can think about how our faults are impermanent. They are not things that are happening in every moment. All sentient beings make mistakes. It's something we have in common. And all our habits that we find unskillful, we can reduce them gradually. Eventually, we can free our mind from them. This potential to transform the mind exists in everyone's mind, but not everyone is in the ideal situation to be able to work on their mind. Those who are experiencing physical or mental illness may not be able to work on their mind, or those who are very poor, who live in extremely harsh conditions, or just struggling to stay alive. So even though their minds have this potential, in their present situation, they're not able to develop it. So just think about the lives many people have, the difficulties some people have that make it almost impossible for them to understand the potential that lies within their own minds. And then there are others like us who are not experiencing those kinds of problems, but they may not have access to teachings that will enable them to become aware of this potential, aware of the possibilities they have for transforming the mind. They may spend their whole life completely unaware of this potential and how to develop it. Think of people living in very remote places where they don't have access to these kinds of teachings. And then there are probably people, family members, friends, people you work with, who are just totally disinterested in anything spiritual. They may not be suffering particularly anything physically or mentally. They're living comfortable lives, and they have the opportunity to learn from spiritual teachings, but they don't have the interest. Instead, their interests lie in other things, like accumulating money, possessions, property, or worldly kind of skills and knowledge. And maybe they just enjoy themselves as much as possible. Some probably do negative things, not realizing they're doing negative actions or bringing suffering, problems to themselves, and developing unskillful habits of mind instead of developing their positive potential. We probably all know some people that are just like that. And then there are others who have an interest in spiritual teachings, who really want to practice a path, but they live in countries where it's against the law to study and practice their religions. Spiritual teachers may not be allowed to give teachings. Spiritual groups may not be allowed to gather and study and meditate. Other people face objections from their family members. They may wish to study and practice, but their parents or their partner or their children are opposed to their interest and don't really give them the freedom to study and practice as they wish. So think about all these conditions that so many people find themselves in that are obstacles to recognizing and developing the potential of the mind. We have very good conditions. We have time to be able to study and practice. Even in times where the doors are closed to sinners, we have access to teachers and teachings. And we have the interest to do so. The government is not stopping us. We really have so many good conditions to realize our potential, to use our human brain to support our mind in developing that potential. So try to generate a mind that is aware of this good fortune and how actually it is quite rare. Not everyone has it. Many people don't have it. Try to generate a mind that really wants to use these good conditions while we have them, to use them in a wise and beneficial way. Now take a few moments to rejoice in your efforts to reflect on our good fortunes, to reflect on the obstacles others have. And just dedicate the merit, the positive energy created by reflecting on these things, to be of benefit to your own mind and to ripple out and not exhaust until all sentient beings have been benefited. And then when you're ready, gently bring your attention back to class. So this is a kind of analytical meditation. This is one where we're trying to really think about the reasons why we have a good rebirth and how we might want to use that rebirth. So when you look at basically the three things that we're supposed to do, is we listen to the teachings, we reflect or contemplate on the teachings, and then we meditate. So analytical meditation falls under this middle category of thinking, reflecting, contemplating. It really is just thinking about the teachings, developing reasons, looking at your own experience, and saying, well, is it true? Do I have a precious human rebirth? You know, what is meant by that? And so one of the practices Lama Zopa Rinpoche really tries to help us internalize is that, you know, if we have this really good human rebirth and all we use it for is indulging in sensory pleasures, you know, what use is that? Is that really meaningful? Will that give us satisfaction at the end of the day? Meaning, you know, that day that we're on our deathbed, you know, basically. So we have to look at, you know, our situation and really reflect on, because we all have days where we feel like, oh yeah, good conditions, yeah, you know. But when we really allow ourselves to look at the situation around the world, then it's very easy to see. And we don't even have to look further than our own backyard. I mean, it's not like everybody in this country has good conditions, not by a long shot. So those of us who do, you know, this is a meditation to encourage us. Don't, you know, not look at that. You know, you really do have good conditions. We have a lot to be grateful for. And of course, according to the teachings, we created the cause for these things. So we want to continue creating the cause for good conditions. And one of the important aspects of that is having a motivation that is meaningful, you know, that isn't just about what's in it for me, you know. So what's in it for us, though, is a good rebirth if we keep using our lives in a meaningful way. And what's wonderful is the more that we can engage our mind in what makes our lives meaningful, the less we suffer. You know? Nothing else, we mentally suffer less. Because we don't end the day with you know, an empty kind of hollow-like feeling. You know, we have memories of activities we're doing that help others, that benefit our mind. We're working on our minds, all of those things. So these are the kind of ways in which we can help ourselves remember why we want to practice, you know, to help us motivate ourselves to say, okay, it's you know, because, you know, in like the Buddha's logic, you know, we can, you know, many of us really work hard at trying to take care of our bodies, whether we exercise or we eat right or we get enough sleep, all those things. And we know the body's going to fail us. According to the Buddha, the mind never ends. And yet we don't take very good care of it. We don't spend a lot of time on our minds. And that might be very foolish. So it's just trying to find that balance, you know, that yes, of course we need to take care of our bodies. And one of the reasons we need to take care of our bodies is it has an effect on our mind. It's a physical support for our mind. So we know if we eat a whole lot of junk, you know, for me, if I eat a whole lot of sugar, my mind's just insane. You know, it just doesn't, I don't feel good. And when I don't, you know, when my body feels that lousy, I can't, you know, use my mind effectively. You know, so they're interconnected, they're interdependent. But the more that we try to recognize, you know, yes, our body's definitely going to fail us. You know, so we might want to spend some time on cultivating, you know, our heart, our mind, because this goes from life to life. So how are we doing?
Terrific.
Oh, this is good. We like terrific. So anyway, so please, those of you who are new to meditation, try to give it a go. Try, you know, set a goal of, you know, even if it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to sit at my kitchen table for 5 minutes, you know, and not do anything else. sit quietly and try to follow my breath, you know, just to prove to yourself you have 5 minutes, that your world does not fall apart if you do this for 5 minutes. You know, if you need that kind of convincing, that's fine. You know, do what you need to do, you know. And it may even be that you go out for a run and you come back and you sit on your front stoop for 5 minutes, after stretching, of course, after the appropriate cool down period. But you find some way to integrate it into your routine. And that doesn't mean it has to seem perfect. You don't have to find that perfect 5 minutes. That comes with time. As you become more familiar with your mind, you will have to adapt, you know, because you'll discover things that make it more conducive for you. Okay. So I encourage you to read. I encourage you to, you know, start with the breath meditations. And I encourage you to, like, if you're in your readings, if it's, you know, well, some readings might just go right over your head. Don't worry about it. Not a problem. You know, and then bring your questions back to the class and read the different meditations I've sent you, just to get familiar with them. And you know, they can be long, so you don't have to do one in one sitting or something. First, just start with following, you know, developing your concentration. Questions? Are we good? Rebecca, should I send you this meditation I just did on precious human rebirth?
Sure, and I'll send it to everyone that I sent. Did everyone there was only one person and that person left already that said they didn't get the meditations. Everyone else has all the readings. So if not, just shoot me an email and I'll send what Venerable Tendron sends me. And just as a reminder, it'll be a good opportunity for some meditating on Saturday. Venerable Amy is doing a class for us at 10 o'clock. It's practical compassion for kindness and clarity. I think that's the exact title. But anyway, there will be meditations in that, guided meditations. And then on Sunday morning at 10, we'll have the meditation period with Jackie. And then it will follow straight into Venerable Tendron's class. And I actually had someone comment to me, wow, I really like that, the way then the class started. So, you know, that's something we had talked about. Do we need a break? Do we not need a break? So if I know most of the people on here are regular students of the center, we are trying to make whatever works for the students, and we're trying to keep up with the technology. So if there's something that you're really enjoying, it's helpful if you say, hey, this really works for us, I like it. Or if there's something that you're finding difficult, let us know that too. No promises that it's going to be fixed, but we'll try. And also, Nicole asked me to mention tonight that the link, you all got here, so you probably figured this out, but the link for this class every Thursday will be the original link, the same meeting number. So please just hang on to that, because I guess a lot of people have been texting her 10 minutes before the class that they can't get in. And so if however you got in today, this is how you're going to get every Thursday for the how to meditate. When we change modules, it will be different. So sorry for all the mundane stuff, but if there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah, like this, you've never had such a great opportunity to have practice meditation. We're offering tons of opportunities. So, of course, that's different than a daily practice. But anyway, so you might be able to see the Zoom meeting number somewhere. I don't know whether it's listed somewhere, but or how you found it. but I put it on my calendar finally today. So on the reminder to like show up, it tells me the meeting ID. That's very helpful. So, because I can never find the email again. So, but it is out there. So, oh, and I can tell y'all all what it is, or is it different for every person?
I think that everyone who got in tonight, everyone who's here, they got in. So just hang on to however you got in tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Good enough. All right. Well, thank you.
I got in I went through my history and I found the link from last week. I'm wondering, is there a way that we could have one meeting ID number for all the classes? Is that possible or no?
for the Thursday classes, yes. And I will tell you what it is now. Or I'll just, you know what, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
But every, it's a separate meeting. So it can't just be one ID number. And I was going to do the dedication prayers. Oh, I found it. Aren't y'all proud of me?
Always, Venerable Tendron.
Right answer. So if you have time to recite the prayer, please do. If you don't have time, see you sometime soon, I'm sure. So. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid. May those bound be freed. May the powerless find power. And may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.